Hi, my name is Sanna Anderson and I'm one of the nutritionists at the Optimum Health Clinic. Today we're going to be talking about adrenal glands and how they may relate to fatigue. I'll specifically talk a little bit about what we mean by stress, what the job of the adrenal glands is, and how they relate to fatigue. Hopefully, by the end of this video, you'll have a little bit of a better understanding just about how the adrenal glands work and why the stress response was developed over time in evolution and why sometimes this no longer serves us. So if we start with a little bit of theory, adrenal glands are part of our endocrine system, which is basically a collection of glands. The job of the glands is to produce and release different hormones which target specific functions in the body. And the job of the adrenal glands in particular is to help the body cope with stresses and help us survive. Before I go into more detail about adrenals and their role in fatigue-related conditions, it might be useful to just say a few words about what we actually mean by stress. For most people, when they think about stress, first thoughts usually circle around things like money, work, relationships, basically various emotional things that we find challenging. But it's quite good to remember that also physical injuries, infections, and even high-intensity exercise can also be counted as stressors. Basically, you're looking at anything that puts a demand on us, mind or body, that's beyond what's expected. It's good to remember too that stressors aren't always something negative. Often, if I mention stress to clients, it's immediately seen as looking for something negative in their lives. And this is not always the case. Running a marathon would be a stressor, as it puts a more than average demand on the body, even if it was something you've always dreamt of doing. Of course, how much of a stressor something becomes is also very much dependent on our perception of our ability to deal with it. So public speaking, definitely giving me a bit of a stress response, although not as much as it used to before, but as I'm slightly getting used to it now. There are people that don't even bat an eyelid doing things like this. So if you just look at those differences between individuals, you can see that our mind has a big role to play in stress too. What's important though is that it doesn't matter whether the stressor is physiological or psychological, because the changes created in the body in response, they're always the same. And what's driving those changes are the hormones produced by the adrenal glands that are basically released during a stress reaction. There are 3 stages to the stress response. So if you're reading about sort of more theory around stress, you'll come across these terms. They're usually called alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. The first one is all about dealing with the immediate stressor, exam situation, me talking to the camera, maybe someone losing the control of the car in front of you on a busy motorway, something that really gets your heart pumping and therefore gets your stress response going. Basically, what that means when I say that it gets your stress response going is that there's an immediate activation of the adrenal glands. They, in turn, release adrenaline, create a number of physiological changes to help you deal with the threat and hopefully survive. So in evolutionary terms, if we were still cavemen or women, that threat could well be sort of running away from a saber-toothed tiger. And to help us survive the attack or the marathon or the public speaking, various different changes happen in the body. Digestion slows down because that helps save energy. Immune system also dials down because it's not that important for the immediate survival. Blood pressure goes up because that helps pump more oxygen and nutrients to the muscles. This is all basically part of the fight or flight response. And it's brilliant. It's been basically orchestrated to help us survive. And then, as soon as the cause is removed, the process all should normalize and basically the various different body functions should come back to a level. However, life is not quite so simple anymore, and often the source of stress continues, and over time, this alarm reaction will turn into something called the resistance stage. If this phase persists without periods of nice bit of relaxation, rest, you may start actually suffering from more negative side effects of the stress response. That could be more fatigue, concentration lapses, digestive issues, increased infections, poor sleep, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep. Basically, things that no longer really serve you. And if things still continue, the resistance stage can then move on to exhaustion stage, when the body is very much depleted of its so-called adrenal reserves. And this is often where we start talking about adrenal exhaustion or adrenal dysfunction. Symptoms at this stage look very similar to ones I was talking about in the resistance stage, but usually just sadly with worsening severity. The end result could be chronic digestive issues, depression, chronic pain, immunological problems, ultimately mental and physical exhaustion. So the process which was created and fine-tuned to aid the survival, it's now actually become the enemy. And the trouble is, it's not just the stressor itself that's the only problem, but also the prolonged response that we continue to have, and all of those body functions that no longer serve us, creating more of an imbalance and becoming stressors in and of themselves as well. And this is often where I find many of our clients. They present with many body systems that are worn out by long-term stress response. We very, very frequently see chronic digestive issues, immune systems that are struggling to fight off infections. So really telling story often is, when I talk to clients, is they say, look, anything stressful happening, it just exhausts me even more. I don't seem to be able to appropriately respond in stressful situations anymore. Basically, behind all of those adrenal glands that can no longer appropriately respond to new stressors. So, given that we approach fatigue-related conditions as a collection of multiple issues concerning a number of different body systems, adrenal dysfunction really fits quite well into this picture. Basically, long-term adrenal activation can have an effect on so many different key functions in the body and therefore contribute to many fatigue-related symptoms. I hope that gave you a little bit of an idea of the role of the adrenal glands and how they fit in when we talk about fatigue and chronic conditions. You can always find more on our website at theoptimumhealthclinic.com, and I'll be going into more detail in some forthcoming videos, so you can always check those out too.